I exposed my wife's affair publicly and humiliated her in front of everyone. The day I discovered my wife's infidelity began like any other, ordinary, predictable, and comforting in its routine. I got up early, made us coffee, and kissed her goodbye as she headed out for another, late meeting. If only I'd known the weight of that kiss, the falseness behind her tired smile, I might have stopped her right there. But I didn't, and that's the thing about betrayal. You never see it coming until it's too late. The signs had been there for months, tiny red flags I had brushed aside as paranoia. Her sudden protectiveness over her phone, a faint unfamiliar cologne that clung to her when she came home late, the way her eyes sparkled during conversations that didn't involve me. But love makes you blind. Or maybe I just didn't want to see. That day, everything changed. I was home early from work, having taken the afternoon off to surprise her with dinner reservations for her favorite Italian restaurant. As I walked through the house, I noticed her handbag on the kitchen counter, a rare sight since she usually kept it glued to her side. At first, I hesitated. Rummaging through someone's belongings felt wrong, invasive. But then, as if driven by a force I couldn't explain, I unzipped the bag. What I found inside sent my world crashing down. There was a hotel receipt tucked into her wallet, dated 2 nights ago. A boutique hotel downtown, one we had never visited together. My heart raced as I held the receipt, my mind conjuring scenarios that made my stomach churn. But the clincher was her phone, vibrating softly with a new message. It lit up the screen just long enough for me to see the name, Jared. I didn't recognize the name, but the message was damning enough. Can't stop thinking about last night. When can we meet again? For a moment, I stood there frozen, my body trembling as my brain tried to make sense of it all. Jared, last night, meet again. The words repeated in my head, each one slicing deeper than the last. I wanted to believe there was some innocent explanation, that I was jumping to conclusions. But deep down, I already knew the truth. That evening, I didn't confront her. Instead, I played the role of the loving husband. We went to dinner, and I pretended nothing was wrong. I watched her laugh, sip her wine, and tell me about her long day at work. It was surreal, sitting across from her, knowing what I knew. My mind screamed at me to demand answers, but my heart whispered, not yet. I needed proof, undeniable, irrefutable proof. So, over the next few days, I became a man on a mission. I scoured her texts, emails, and call logs when she wasn't looking. I even hired a private investigator, a decision that felt both empowering and sickening. It was one thing to suspect your spouse of cheating, it was another to actively seek confirmation. The pie didn't take long to deliver results. Photos, timestamps, and locations. There they were, my wife and Jared, laughing over coffee, walking arm in arm, and checking into the same boutique hotel. Each image was a dagger to the heart, a painful reminder that the woman I loved had betrayed me in the most intimate way. But the question remained, what was I going to do about it? Confronting her seemed too easy, too clean. She had shattered my trust, my sense of security, and my faith in our marriage. I wanted her to feel the weight of her actions, to understand the depth of the pain she had caused. And so, I hatched a plan, one that would ensure she could never spin the narrative in her favor. Her birthday was coming up, a milestone she had been eagerly anticipating for months. She had planned a lavish party at our home, inviting all her friends, family, and colleagues. It was supposed to be a celebration of her life, her accomplishments, and, ostensibly, our love. Little did she know, it would also be the stage for her unmasking. In the days leading up to the party, I worked tirelessly behind the scenes. I curated a slideshow of memories from our marriage, carefully selecting photos that showcased the happiest moments of our life together. But interspersed among the smiling selfies and vacation snapshots were the damning images of her and Jared. I timed everything perfectly, ensuring the incriminating photos would appear toward the end of the presentation. The night of the party arrived, and I played my role to perfection. I greeted guests, poured drinks, and made small talk, all while suppressing the storm raging inside me. My wife was radiant, the center of attention as she flitted from one group to the next, completely unaware of what was coming. When it was time for the slideshow, I gathered everyone in the living room. She sat beside me, her hand resting on mine, as the first images appeared on the screen. There we were on our wedding day, her in a flowing white gown, me in a tailored suit, both of us beaming with joy. The room filled with nostalgic sighs and murmurs of admiration. But as the slideshow progressed, the tone began to shift. The first photo of her and Jared appeared, a grainy shot of them sitting in a coffee shop, their heads close together. A few people chuckled awkwardly, thinking it was some sort of joke. But then came the next photo, and the next, each one more incriminating than the last. Gasps filled the room as the final image appeared. My wife and Jared walking into the boutique hotel, their hands intertwined. The silence that followed was deafening. I turned to look at her, and for the first time that evening, she wasn't smiling. "What is this?" she stammered, her voice barely above a whisper. I stood up, my heart pounding but my resolve unshaken. "This," I said, gesturing to the screen, "is the truth. The truth about you, about us, and about the lies you've been living." For a moment, no one moved. The weight of the truth hung in the air like a storm cloud, crackling with unspoken tension. My wife, no, the woman I thought I knew, looked around the room, her face pale, her hands trembling as she tried to come up with an explanation. But what could she say? The evidence was irrefutable, displayed for everyone to see. "David, I don't understand," she stuttered, her voice breaking. "Oh, you don't understand?" I replied, my tone sharper than I intended. "Should I explain it to you? Or maybe Jared could do the honors." Her eyes widened in panic, darting around the room as if searching for an ally. But there were none. Her friends, her family, even her colleagues, all of them were staring at her with a mixture of shock, disappointment, and disgust. The mask she had worn so well for so long had been ripped away, and the woman beneath it was someone none of them recognized. The room buzzed with whispers, fragmented sentences carrying the weight of judgment. "Is this real? How could she? I can't believe it." Her parents sat frozen on the couch, their expressions a blend of disbelief and heartbreak. Her mother finally spoke, her voice trembling. "Sarah, tell me this isn't true." Tears welled up in her eyes as she turned to her mother, but no words came out. She looked at me, pleading silently, but I was done being her safety net. "Go ahead," I said, crossing my arms. "Explain yourself. Tell everyone here why the woman who promised to love and honor me decided that wasn't enough." She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. The silence stretched on, each passing second amplifying her guilt. Finally, she stood up, her face streaked with tears, and fled the room. The sound of the front door slamming behind her echoed through the house. For a moment, the room remained frozen, as if no one knew what to do or say. Then, one by one, people began to leave. Some muttered apologies, others patted me on the shoulder, but most left without a word. I didn't stop them. This wasn't about them. It was about me taking back control of my life. When the house was finally empty, I sat alone in the living room, staring at the blank screen where the slideshow had played. The adrenaline that had carried me through the night was gone, replaced by a deep, aching sadness. Yes, I had exposed her lies, but the cost was the life we had built together. Even though it was built on a foundation of betrayal, it still hurt to see it crumble. The days that followed were a blur. She tried to contact me, calls, texts, even showing up at the house, but I ignored her. There was nothing left to say. My lawyer had already started the divorce proceedings, and I was determined to see it through. She had made her choices, and now she had to live with the consequences. Surprisingly, it was Jared who reached out to me. He sent me a message, apologizing for his role in everything and claiming he didn't know she was married when they first started seeing each other. I didn't reply. Whether he was telling the truth or not didn't matter to me. He was just another piece of the puzzle, one I had no interest in putting back together. As the weeks turned into months, I began to rebuild my life. It wasn't easy. There were days when the anger and sadness threatened to consume me, but I refused to let her betrayal define me. I threw myself into my work, reconnected with old friends, and even started therapy to process everything I'd been through. Eventually, I found peace. The memories of that night, of the slideshow, of her face when the truth was revealed, began to fade. They didn't disappear entirely, some scars never do, but they no longer held power over me. I had taken back control of my life, and for the first time in a long time, I felt free. As for her, I heard through mutual friends that she had moved out of town. Her reputation was in shambles, and the fallout from that night had cost her more than just our marriage. Her friends distanced themselves, her colleagues lost respect for her, and even Jared eventually ended things. It wasn't the outcome I had planned for, but it was one she had brought upon herself. Looking back, I don't regret what I did. It wasn't just about revenge, it was about reclaiming my dignity and showing her, and myself, that I deserved better. The road to healing was long and difficult, but it taught me something valuable. Sometimes, the only way to move forward is to confront the pain head-on, no matter how much it hurts. And so, I closed that chapter of my life and began writing a new one where I was no longer defined by her betrayal, but by my resilience and strength. Because in the end, the truth didn't just set me free, it set me on a path to becoming the person I was always meant to be.